So, Japanese armored tank crew uniforms. Being a long enthusiast of Japanese armor and militaria since as long as I can remember. I actually started out modeling Japanese aircraft, as all you guys know, then moved over to the dark side, and quite happily love Japanese armor. So I figure, though, that there's not a lot written on Japanese armor, and I decided to put together this piece, which is now downloadable off of IPMS Toronto website. If you go there, you look under articles, you can download it from there. And it's just a small article on camouflage markings and, to some extent, since I collect militaria, some tank crew uniforms. A couple of things moving right into this thing, a note on colors. You guys know this. FS colors, in my opinion, are only used as an estimate. And I think those days are long gone where people just go to an FS color chip and say this is the color. In my opinion, color matches are not a science. It's really an art. And what you're aiming at when you use an FS chip is you're aiming at a range of hues and colors, okay? Not just one color chip. And that's because you have a lot of inconsistencies with the hue mixing and manufacturing limitations, conflicting standards and orders. In Japan, there were a series of paint orders coming out of the factories in the 30s, and one in 1943 that's well documented. But it's very hard to follow those things because the interpretation was not as clear as they could be. Expediency in terms of the feel, in terms of mixing, that's also been a problem. Field application and interpretation as to what colors the crew wanted to apply to the tanks given orders were always subject to interpretation. And of course, good old-fashioned weathering. I do also lighten all my colors with pure white. Be careful with white, though. It tends to chalk up colors a little bit, but it's okay for scale effect. And a bit about tone and hues. But I only use white for scale effect. And generally, these are my own formulas. You guys might be different. 72nd, I add as much as 30% white to a color to lighten it up, right? 35th, as much as 10%. Usually that's the case. So this case here, this kachi, very hard to create a green that's interesting. So you have to lighten it up. Does it look like a real tank? Probably not. It's our artistic interpretation. So getting to the ABCs and 101s of color, this color chart shows that there's a thing called tone. You've heard of that. It comes from dark to light. Those are on the grayscale. That's when you add black or white to a color. If you want to change the color in hue, not tone, right? It's this way. So that's when you would add like a flesh tone or a yellow hue. So when you apply filters over a color, right, those filters will change the hue. It does not change the tone. You can use filters to change a tone by using gray filters if you want. But it's kind of interesting that some people ask me, what color filters are you going to use? It's entirely up to you to help you with that decision making. It's not a science. It's all up in your eye, right? And you know this, you paint. It's the color that suits your eye. It's not a magical formula, okay? So tone is how light or dark a color is, and hue is what the actual color is. And some rules, the lighter the hues produce a smaller range of tones. So colors like desert, dunkelgelb and some desert yellows and beiges, they actually produce a spectrum that is fewer in terms of the number of hues that you can play with. And using black and white are not the only colors to change a hue. Like I say, you can use, a lot of guys use yellow and flesh to change olive greens. Any questions? Okay, I'll go through all this reading. Don't have to read it, I'll go through it all. Camouflage summaries. The problem with Japanese is that you have translational issues, and then you have the gaijin translational issues of Western society that are applied to Japanese terms. In this case, I'm going to refer to English terms of colors like khaki, followed by an anglicized version of Japanese equivalents. So in this case, you see khaki drab, it's tsuchikusa iro, and that refers to khaki drab. Why do I include the Japanese? Because you'll find that in a lot of the references from Japan. They will anglicize it, and this is the Japanese term for khaki drab. Tsuchiiro is the term for dark brown, so on and so forth. Early period, 1937. I start there because that's the beginning of the Sino-Japanese War in China. The Japanese were in China earlier than that, as early as 32, Marco Polo Bridge. But for the purposes of camouflage, we start in 37. So you go from 37 to 42, mostly China, Southeast Asia, homelands, some obviously Southwest Pacific in the early parts of the war, was a three-tone camouflage scheme with a base color of khaki drab. It's that khaki drab served as its primer. Okay, they were the Japanese from, I mean, I may be wrong, but they didn't use like red browns like the Germans did. And it was dark brown and light brown, okay? Pre-37, the base color was a reddish brown, but we don't know for sure. But we can say from the black and white photos that it was a slightly darker color. The use of grass greens, kusairo, often substituted for light brown after 41. So that really gets confusing. That's why I decided to put this together. Mostly hard edge, okay? Pretty well all hard edge, except towards the end of the war. There's some use of those yellow disruptive bands with some black outlining, but those black outlines disappeared around 42, 43. You do not see them on any Japanese armor after 42, 43. Surface cover ratios are about 50% khaki, 30% dark brown, and the rest 20% kuso iro, okay? Later period, 42 to 45, three-tone scheme again, but the grass green becomes the base color, not the khaki drab, okay? Dark brown, light brown, same kind of basic coverage proportions, and the 43 regulations, as I said before, the use of black outlining and yellow bands pretty well disappears from regulation, but you can see some yellow bands on some Japanese tanks as late as 44. Naval landing force, Japanese operated a naval landing force like the US Marines. A few of these tanks were a dark blue-gray, possibly a naval color. So Tamiya makes one, Kirei, and they make another Arsenal, I forget, in their paint ranges. They're pretty good. As well as dark and olive greens now. If you're doing a late war version of this guy, let's say, Saipan, they were all green. Very few were gray by that point. Okay? The yellow bands were painted between the colors starting at the top of the turret. So they weren't just random. Here, I'll show you an example after that. Let me just get to that. They start here at the top of the turret. So at the side it looks like it's random, but it's not. It starts here. Why did they do that? I don't know. And why did they use that yellow? I don't know. Nobody knows. Now we go back to the finish off here. This is the chart range that I put together that has the color, okay, the Japanese term, and then the equivalents of the modern colors. Tamiya, I know these are hard to get, Gunzi acrylics. Oh, by the way, Darren, the Gunzi acrylics are available in Toronto at a Hobby King store north of here. They're the only place that stocks them. Make colors and some notes. I'm not going to go through all these, but I'm giving you, these are my mixes, so some guys can go, hey man, that's not right. So look, try them out yourself. I got them off of consultations with guys in Japan, research, and just playing around with existing color photos. And that's what I came up with.
Vallejo colors.
I didn't add the Vallejo colors. The only closest ones I got are Gunzi because I don't know about you guys, I don't use the Vallejo colors for spraying much. Does anybody use them for spraying? You like them?
They're not really good bearing. If you're handling the model,
Yeah. That's one that I find are really soft.
Yeah.
Like with this one here, the car,
Yeah.
I've used Vallejo and I used Tamiya. That's Tamiya field blue,
Okay.
right? It is so much like harder to try to take off
Yes.
than the Vallejo. Vallejo is just like, it could be straight on and I can just take a brush and start scrubbing and it'll come right off.
They come right off, yeah. I find
them.
them, they're very latexy too.
I prime.
Yeah.
And as soon as I finish and it's painted,
Yeah.
I get it to me clear.
Oh, okay. And that works.
Yeah.
But that's why I don't have them here, because I don't use them for good or bad. Other notes, go through this quickly. Often lower portions of barrels and the undersides of the hull, the wheel areas were sometimes painted light brown. You actually see look closely at pictures of Japanese, even artillery barrels, the undersides painted differently. There were no standardization of tank markings like the Germans or the Allies. All they had was a single kana or kanji character found on the hull turret sides, almost always in white, no other color. Kanji is the Chinese equivalent of the alphabet that the Japanese used. Single characters would signify vehicles belonging to the same group or chutai. Chutai is like a section. It'd be like a 3 or 4 typically. The Chutai terms are also used in the Air Force for Army aircraft as well, not for Navy. Numerals found on the hull sides were almost always in white as well, up to 41, but then you don't see numerals on Japanese tanks after 41. License plates, small rectangular square plate at the back of the tank, usually with an Army star or a Navy anchor to start off with, and a number of numerals representing the regiment and the tank number. Arm of service on the front of the hull was usually a star for Army or an anchor for the Navy that was in brass. That typically was overpainted with the camouflage of the tank when it was in the field. Some examples. This is a color photo. Shows you the really light parched green that you can see here. It's very bright. Okay. I don't have a lot of Japanese original color period photos. Here's another one of a Hago. Again, note the very, very hard edge. It's almost as if they used a mask. It doesn't even look like it's paintbrush. It's really hard to say. But you can see the very bright colors. Okay. Another one of a Hago on Tarawa. You can barely make out, again, that very bright, it's almost like the Japanese mixes for this. It's not Danko Galv, it's actually got a lot more orange in it. I tried their mix, it looked a little too orange to me, but hey. Again, hard edge camouflage on all these Japanese tanks, Shihoto Chiha, Vatsa Chiha from Guadalcanal at the Matanakau attack. And you can see there's your white numerals, and there's your kanji, and there's your very, very hard edge. Some more shots. Note the Nipponese flag on the bottom of the hulls here. Very patriotic. And look at the, I mentioned at the last AMPS meeting, look at the trans sag. So if you're at an AMPS meeting and the judges go, hey man, the tank is too saggy. Well, no, they repeat that. All right, so you can see that you see it on a lot of Japanese tanks. This one's just interesting because you get the tow cable and again the very hard edge camouflage. This is a command vehicle with the aerial. Yeah, they did put flags on them, so that's okay. There's a license plate here. You can barely see it on the rear. This is probably the tank crew. They're using the forage caps in replacement of the helmets when they're not in combat. And it's a typical forage hat that the infantry used. And there's some late war, right? That's soft edge. This is late war. Now you can see the soft edge. Right? Anyone know what that is? Self-propelled gun? Yeah, late version of Honai.
That's the thing. That's actually the Honai.
Yeah.
That's Japan. That's when they surrendered.
Yeah, that's right.
Have to surrender.
I wonder what happened to them all.
Razor blades.
Yeah, razor blades and Toyotas.
This is just an example where you did have tanks that were overall beige or the khaki color. Now here's a Kami. You can't see it from the back, but there's a disruptive camouflage pattern. No one knows what the color is. It could be a brown or it could be a dark green, but there it is.
Harvey, is that flying backwards? Is that
That's normal.
normal?
Yep. Look at it on this tank. They're all backward. Kind of like the Americans, you know, the arm flash on American uniforms?
Yeah, but
in
that's
Afghanistan and everywhere, they're reverse.
It's because usually on things going forward,
Yeah.
you want hands on forward,
Yeah.
right? And the Yanks, in World War II though, the Yanks didn't have it that way. They
Right.
always had one going backwards.
That's right.
Right.
So now they flipped it around. These are motorcycles. Actually, you can get this kit. Pit Road makes it now. And I just put this up because it's very shiny. That guy's got an anchor on his helmet. It's Naval Landing Force. You can barely make it out, but that's body armor. That guy's wearing body armor. And
That forward, the flag's going forward on the side.
see there? See?
Okay.
Backwards. But it's backwards again. So put them on right. That's my, you've seen that. You've seen that. You've seen that. That's this, but weathered now. So that'll be out in an article sometime soon. I don't know which magazine. Rank of service. Now we're getting into the military accoutrements of the tank crew. And you can see most tankers were very comfortable wearing the forge caps, and they would revert to the helmets and the goggles when they were closer to the front lines. Name tag on the uniforms. They did have dog tags, but they also put the name tags on uniforms. And yes, they carried swords. Where he puts that in the tank, I will never know, but they had them. Must have been hard when you're kind of yelling bonsai, running out of the tank. Where's my sword? And you're kind of, okay, whatever. But this is a, what tank is this, Sandy?
Type 89.
Thank you.
It's an army. It's got the star on it. I said, no, it was the army. I think it's the 7th edition or something.
What tank is that?
It was a Bandwagon one I was watching.
Yeah, also
Where would that be?
in China.
Nationalist forces, Chinese nationalists. This guy's wearing a winter tanker overall. Actually, these guys are probably the tank crew. This guy's an officer, which is wearing your Type 98 wool uniform, so he's probably not the crew. There's a Type 89 here, and look at the smaller tankette. I don't even know what that is. From here, I think it's a Type 98. I don't know. You see the size comparison. And that's a Stewart. M3 Stewart. Typical crew uniforms that you wore, the overalls, coveralls, like British tankers. And they also wear tunics, infantry tunics. So if you're doing tank crews, you can actually have them in infantry uniforms. It's not like the Yanks where they had, you could actually have a Japanese infantry guy sitting on a chief box. It's okay, right? They were much more relaxed in their dress codes than the Germans. You see a picture of the guys marching into Singapore. This guy wearing a white T-shirt, right? So they were very, very relaxed in there. That's a Japanese tanker helmet. Just showing the colors, that's all. That's why I have them. And I photographed these under proper lighting, so they're pretty close to the... That's actually gotten old, so that's not yellow. It's just gotten old. That's the inside of the helmet. That's the forge cap with the Havelock or the neck sun protector. And this just shows you that they were clipped. See? Came off. So the guys wearing them on the tanks could take them on and off. Binoculars. These are the smaller set of Army binoculars that tank crews guys tended to use, as opposed to the larger Navy binoculars. That's a Type 98 gunto, Japanese NCO samurai sword. Not that spectacular in terms of its construction, as they were mass produced. These are all metal. Only the officers had this the eel skin. Japanese dog tag. Map case. Give me a sense of the colors. It's a knee mortar. They had these actually in the tanks for added arsenal for the crew. It's Nambu with different color holsters. That's probably going to big stuff. That's a late version. That's late. That's early. See, the straps are different. Canteen. You can barely make out the guy's name. So if you're doing like figures, it's kind of cool. They put their names on their canteens and writing. It's a little extra. Japanese tank gloves. That's the overall on the left. The pants on the right with kind of work suspenders kind of things going. That's a summer tanker jacket, kind of like the U.S. tanker jacket, because it's got that little elastic band on the bottom. See the cut here. And this is a winter tanker jacket. You can see the oil stains. It's pretty dirty, but it's pretty well. Other than that, it's in pretty good shape. Gives you a sense of the colors, and they varied. So if you're going to do a crew of a Japanese tank, you can mix up the tones and the hues of the crew figures. Don't make them all the same. Close-up of the tanker winter uniforms. That's the insignia rank. They were clipped on. Right? Kind of like equivalent of Canadian Armed Forces slip-ons, right? Only they pinned them. Now this, I was going through this jacket the other day, cleaning it, and after all these years, I noticed this. It's a paint splatter. I only noticed this literally 2 weeks ago before the AMPS presentation. That's clearly a paint splatter, and to me, that really looks like the parched grass, and that's pretty close to like I did the right lighting. So what you see there, see it's very, very yellow, beige. So if you're going to do some Japanese armor, there you go. And then I found this, see that? That's pretty close, don't you think? That's pretty close to that. What do you think? So all these years of people going through the articles and saying it was this, that, and the other, and you see a lot of Japanese armor where I think a lot of guys use like just a beige color. It's very, almost yellow. And that yellow band earlier is not yellow. Everyone agrees that it was now probably a pale yellow, very pale, almost like this. It wasn't pure yellow. That probably came out of the 60s, one of the Airfix magazines. Okay. Any questions? And that's it. 20 minutes. Any questions? What's that? Oh, well, it'll be on the web for you to download, Matt. All right, guys. So we'll wrap it up, and then thank you.